the storm arrived without warning, rolling over the mountains like a giant drumbeat. And every animal in the valley felt its power. Wind howled through the trees, rain lashed the rocks, and thunder cracked the sky with a sound so loud it made even the bravest creatures tremble. In the middle of this wild night stood a young lion named Aro, his golden fur soaked in his paws, pressed firmly into the ground as he stared toward the towering Stormy Mountains. Long before the clouds gathered, Aro had been known as a gentle lion, one who listened more than he roared, one who helped the smaller animals instead of showing off his strength. Some whispered that he was too soft to be brave, others said he would never face true danger. But as lightning lit the mountains in sharp white flashes, something inside Aro burned brighter than fear. Tonight, the valley needed courage, and whether he felt ready or not, Aro would have to answer that call. Earlier that day, the valley had been peaceful. Birds sang, the river flowed calmly, and the sun warmed the grass where the young animals played. Aro had been resting near a large acacia tree, watching a group of cubs chase each other and laugh. He smiled softly, enjoying their joy, when an old tortoise named Kima slowly approached him. Kima had lived many seasons and was known for her wisdom. She looked up at Aro with thoughtful eyes and said that the mountains were restless, the winds had shifted, the clouds had thickened. Fear and a storm unlike any other was coming. Aro listened carefully, his ears twitching. He trusted Kima's instincts. Before he could ask more, a sudden gust of wind swept through the valley, bending trees and sending birds flying for shelter. The first low rumble of thunder followed, distant but promising trouble. As the sky darkened, panic spread among the animals. Families hurried toward caves, burrows, and dens. Mothers called for their young, and leaders shouted instructions, but fear made everything confusing. Then came the real danger. A massive landslide broke loose from the Stormy Mountains, blocking the narrow mountain pass that connected the valley to the high plateau. On that plateau lived several herds who depended on the valley's river for water. Worse still, the landslide threatened to divert the river itself, which could flood the lower valley by morning. The elders gathered quickly and realized someone would have to cross the Stormy Mountain path, reach the high plateau, and warn the herds, while also finding a way to clear part of the river's flow. The task was terrifying. The path was steep, slippery, and now battered by storm winds. Many strong animals stepped back, their eyes filled with doubt. Aro felt his heart pound. He had never climbed a Stormy Mountains alone, especially not during a storm. Fear wrapped around him like cold rain. Then he remembered the cubs, laughing, the calm river, and the trust in Kima's eyes. Without fully realizing it, Aro stepped forward. His voice shook at first, but it grew steadier as he spoke. He said he would go. A hush fell over the group. Some looked surprised, others worried. Aro was not the loudest lion, nor the biggest, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet determination that made the elders nod. Kima smiled gently and told him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. Aro began his climb as the storm reached its peak. Rain turned the dirt path into mud, and rocks slid under his paws. Each step required focus. The wind pushed against him, trying to knock him sideways, and thunder roared so close, it felt as if the mountains themselves were shouting. Several times, Aro slipped and barely caught himself, too. Each time, fear surged through him, whispering that he should turn back. But then he remembered why he was there. He remembered that others depended on him. With every careful step, his confidence grew, not because the storm weakened, but because he learned he could endure it. Halfway up the path, Aro heard a cry. He followed the sound and found a young mountain goat trapped on a narrow ledge, too scared to move as rain poured down. The goat's eyes were wide with terror. Helping would slow Aro down, and time was precious. but leaving the goat felt impossible. Aro spoke softly, telling the goat to trust him. He positioned himself carefully, blocking the wind, and guided the goat step by step until they reached a safer spot. The goat thanked him before running toward shelter. As Aro watched the goat disappear, something changed inside him. He realized courage was not only about completing a mission, but about choosing kindness even when afraid. When Aro finally reached the high plateau, the storm was still raging, but he pressed on. He found the herds huddled together, confused and frightened by the strange river sounds below. Aro raised his voice and explained the danger, guiding them toward higher ground. He then worked with several strong animals to move fallen branches and rocks, creating a small channel that helped redirect part of the river away from the valley. The work was exhausting. Aro's muscles burned, and his breath came in heavy gasps, but he did not stop until the water began to flow more safely. As dawn slowly broke, the storm began to fade. The sky lightened from dark gray to pale blue, and the rain softened into a gentle mist. From the plateau, Aro looked down at the valley and saw that it was safe. The river flowed within its banks, and smoke from morning fires rose calmly into the air. Relief washed over him, followed by a quiet pride. He had done it. Not because he was fearless, but because he had chosen courage. When Aro returned to the valley, the animals gathered to greet him. Cheers echoed, and even those who once doubted him bowed their heads in respect. Kima approached slowly and told Aro that he had walked the path of true courage. Aro felt warmth spread through his chest, not from praise, but from knowing he had helped. He looked around at the valley, peaceful once more, and understood something important. Courage did not always roar like thunder, suds. It was as steady as a lion climbing a stormy mountain, step by careful step, choosing to move, be brave for others. Even when his heart was shaking inside, morning sunlight touched the valley gently, but the memory of the storm still lingered in every bent tree and muddy trail. Aro rested only briefly before new worries began to stir. Though the valley had been saved from flooding, the Stormy Mountains were still unstable, and cracks had opened along the upper ridges. The elders gathered again, speaking in low voices about aftershocks, falling rocks, and frightened animals stranded on the far side of the mountains. Aro listened quietly, feeling tired in his bones, but alert in his heart. He knew courage did not end when applause faded. True courage stayed awake even when the danger seemed past. As the elders debated, a sudden shout echoed from the edge of the valley. A scout bird swooped down, breathless, announcing that a group of young animals had not returned from a mountain meadow before the storm and were now trapped by fallen rocks and rising fog. Fear rippled through the crowd. Parents cried out, and some animals ran in circles, unsure what to do. The path Aro had climbed the night before was now partly blocked, and new routes were even more dangerous. Aro closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the wind pushing against him, the slippery stones, and the trembling goat he had helped. His body ached, and Dao whispered that he had already done enough. Then he opened his eyes and saw the faces of the worried parents. Without speaking, he stepped forward again. This time, the elders did not hesitate. They asked Aro what he needed. He requested companions who were calm under pressure and willing to listen. A steady zebra, a sharp-eyed eagle, and a patient mole volunteered. Together, they formed a small team bound, not by strength alone, but by trust. The journey back into the mountains felt different in daylight. The storm clouds had thinned, but mist clung to the rocks, making every ledge uncertain. The ground smelled fresh and raw, as if the mountains themselves were still catching their breath. Aro led carefully, setting a pace that allowed everyone to stay together. When the path narrowed, he waited. When rocks shifted, he warned the others. The eagles scouted ahead, calling down directions, while the mole listened to the ground for signs of further landslides. Step by step, the group moved upward, guided by patience rather than speed. As they climbed, they heard faint voices carried by the wind. The lost animals were close. They spotted them clustered in a small hollow, blocked in by fallen stones and too frightened to climb out alone. Some were crying, others frozen with fear. Arrow approached slowly, lowering himself so he did not seem overwhelming. He spoke softly, telling them they were not alone and that help had come. His calm voice cut through their panic like sunlight through fog. One by one, the young animals looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. Freeing them was not easy. The stones were heavy, and the ground beneath them unstable. Oro remembered how he had redirected the river by working with others, not by forcing things alone. He asked the zebra to brace larger rocks, the mole to loosen dirt carefully from below, and the eagle to watch the slopes for danger. Together, they created a safe passage. It took time. Several times, they had to stop and wait as small rock slides settled. Each pause tested everyone's patience, especially the frightened young ones. Oro stayed with them, telling quiet stories about the valley, about sunny days and peaceful nights, giving their minds something warm to hold on to. At last, the path was clear enough to move. Oro led the way down, placing himself between the children and the steep drop. The return was slow, but steady. When they finally reached the valley, a wave of relief swept through the crowd. Parents rushed forward, tears and laughter mixing freely. The rescue was celebrated, but Oro noticed something deeper than joy. He saw confidence blooming in the eyes of the young animals who had been trapped. They stood taller, having learned that fear could be faced and survived. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Oro wandered alone to the edge of the valley. Exhaustion settled into him now that the urgency had passed. He wondered why curds felt so heavy sometimes, why it demanded so much. As if in answer, Kima the tortoise joined him once more. She spoke gently, saying that courage was like carrying water for others. It could tire you, but it also kept life flowing. Oro listened, feeling the truth of her words settle in his chest. In the days that followed, the Stormy Mountains remained quiet, but their lesson echoed loudly. Animals began helping one another more readily. Older long ones taught the young how to rid the sky and listen to the ground. Leaders asked for advice instead of giving orders alone. Oro did not become louder or more commanding. Instead, he became a symbol of steady bravery. When problems arose, animals looked to him, not because he was fearless, but because he was willing to walk into uncertainty with care and compassion. One afternoon, a young cub approached Oro and asked if he had been scared during the storm. Oro smiled and answered honestly that he had been very scared. The cub looked surprised. Oro explained that bravery did not mean having no fear, but choosing to do what was right, even when fear was present. The cub nodded thoughtfully, as if holding on to a new idea, as the valley healed. Oro realized the Stormy Mountains had changed him. They had shown him that courage grew each time it was used, like a muscle strengthened through effort. He knew future storms would come, both real and unseen. But he also knew he would face them not alone, and not with force, but with trust, kindness, and the quiet strength that had carried him through wind, rain, and doubt. The valley settled into a peaceful rhythm again, but Oro felt a change within himself that would not fade as easily as storm clouds. Days passed, then weeks, and life seemed calm on the surface. Yet the Stormy Mountains loomed quietly in the distance, reminding everyone that strength was not only tested in moments of chaos, but also in times of calm. Oro continued helping others, gliding without commanding, listening more than speaking. Still, a question grew inside him. If courage meant stepping forward when needed, how would he know when the valley needed him again? The answer came one quiet evening when the wind carried a strange sound through the grass. It was not thunder nor rain, but something softer and more troubling. A low, uneven rumble echoed from the mountains, followed by silence. The animals froze. Arrow lifted his head, his ears alert. The ground beneath his paws felt different, tense, as if holding its breath. Moments later, a scout returned with worrying news. A hidden mountain lake had cracked during the storm, and now its waters were slowly seeping toward the valley through underground paths, too. If the pressure grew too strong, the water could burst out suddenly, flooding everything without warning. Panic threatened to rise again, but this time it did not spread as wildly. The animals looked to Arrow, not with fear, but with trust. He felt the weight of their hopes settle on his shoulders. Taking a deep breath, Arrow asked everyone to stay calm and listen. He said they needed to work together, not rush. He asked the beavers to inspect the riverbanks, the elephants to help reinforce natural barriers, and the birds to watch the mountains closely. Instead of doing everything himself, Arrow guided others to use their own strengths. Courage, he had learned, was also about believing in others. As night fell, the work continued. Torches flickered, voices murmured, and paws moved steadily. Arrow stayed awake, checking on each group, offering encouragement when exhaustion showed. At one point, doubt crept in again. What if they failed? What if his calm was not enough? He walked to the edge of the valley and looked toward the mountains, glowing faintly under the moon. Sari, the path he had climbed during the storm, shimmered in his memory. He remembered slipping, struggling, and still moving forward. That memory steadied him. Near midnight, the birds returned with hopeful news. The water pressure had slowed. The beavers' work had guided the underground flow towards safer channels. The immediate danger was passing. Relief spread quietly, like a shared breath finally released. Animals smiled at one another, tired but proud. Arrow felt something new then, not excitement or fear, but peace. He understood that leadership was not about dramatic moments alone. It was about steady presence, patience, and trust built over time. As dawn arrived, painting the sky in soft colors, the elders gathered once more. They thanked Arrow, but he gently shifted the praise to everyone who had helped. He said the valley was strong because its animals stood together. Kima watched him closely and nodded. Later, when the others drifted away, she told Arrow that he had grown into the kind of lion others would follow naturally. Not because he demanded it, but because he cared. That day, young animals gathered around Arrow, asking him to tell them about the stormy night and the mountains. Instead of focusing on danger, he spoke about listening, helping, and taking one brave step at a time. He told them that fear was a feeling, not a stop sign. The children listened with wide eyes, their own hearts quietly learning as seasons changed. The Stormy Mountains remained part of the horizon, no longer symbols of fear, but reminders of lessons learned. Arrow often walked the valley at night, the stars above him, the grass cool beneath his paws. He knew storms would return someday, in one form or another. But he also knew the valley was ready, stunning. Beneath the moon, Arrow lifted his head and let out a gentle roar. Not loud, but clear. It echoed softly, carrying a message of courage, kindness, and unity. And in that sound lived the truth he had discovered on the mountain paths. Courage was not about being the strongest or the loudest. It was about standing steady, helping others rise, and choosing to move forward with heart, even when the way ahead felt